was going to have to operate on a scale that we'd never operated before.
We'd had a number of nighttime battles, we've had a number of sieges, but this is the first pitched battle, or at least the first large pitched battle. And so it was something different for us.
All of it is action with almost no dialogue and lots of horses and many extras and a giant.
The amount of supporting artists and the size of the crew, how many cameras they've got going, the magnitude of all the sets and everything. It's unbelievable.
It was hard. It was a long, long slog.
Luckily, we got Miguel Sapochnik back, who was our maestro from Hard Home in season 5.
That was basically a massacre. This is a battle. This is the story of a battle. We've never done that before.
They really wanted to kind of get into the mindset of what it would be like to be in a battle like that.
It was fluid all the way through. It morphed, it changed. But the most important thing all the way through is it can't just be a battle. If it's just a battle, the audience don't have stakes in it. You have to be following someone, and we decide to follow Jon.
Probably my favorite shot of the whole season is when we're behind Jon Snow and he sees that cavalry wall galloping towards him. And part of the reason it's such a great shot is it's all real. That's 40 horses charging full speed at Kid Harington.
Until the last minute, I was stood there facing off against this cavalry charge, which is really scary. We're a bit annoyed because I think everyone's going to think it was CGI, and it wasn't.
Camilla, our horse mistress, kept asking every year. She said, give me some more stuff to do. Like, this year was boring. It's just people trotting from here to there on their horses. So finally we gave her enough to do.
I read the outline and went, wow, okay, this is adventurous. How are we going to deal with this? It's the biggest amount of horse requirement I've ever had on Game of Thrones. We flew over in May to kind of start discussing how we were going to prep it, how many horses we're going to use. We decided on 80 in the end. So when we first see both armies, we'll use 80 on the Stark side, and then we use 80 on the Boltons, so we're using the maximum. Then when we start to clash, we'll split it in half.
When we had horses charging past me, those are all real horses.
I obviously work very closely with Rowley, putting it all together. And we make channels so it looks like they're clashing, but they're not. The horses are actually just passing through, you know, like 2-foot channels so they can clear out.
We are going to make that look as close as possible to a collision without actually colliding the horses. So in very tight formation, we'll have those guys cross and they will pull the horses as they cross through. We're falling them onto very thick falling beds so we don't injure the horses or injure the guys, but we're going to try and make that something that's not really been done before. You want it to feel crowded and mayhem and like, you know, anything can happen anytime, but I really don't want anything to happen anytime. I want what we plan to happen and it look really cool and let's not hurt anybody.
To get across the field and follow the horses at the speed at which they're moving, and horses move really, really fast, you need a special rig, and the Russian arm is just such a fun machine to work with, and it gives you such dynamic shots.
It's basically a camera tracking vehicle. It's a remote control arm that sits on a Land Rover in our case.
Throughout the Battle of the Bastards, we had a number of tracking vehicles, one of which was the Vampire Bat with the Russian arm on it, on a muddy, slippery field over about 500 or 600 yards with very fast horses. That was the vehicle to chase them properly and get the results we wanted. They worked very well. The results were amazing.
Go! Go! Follow your commander!
You've got two giant armies that are opposing one another. You know you're not going to have more than a few hundred extras on one side or the other, so you've got a lot of crowd replication.
We had a lot of cavalry, a lot of infantry. 1-1, the giant is involved. Most of it would be photographed, but it also needed a lot of digital enhancement.
You've got things happening that you can't shoot in any real way. You've got a giant punching out a horse. We shoot horses falling and charging toward one another that we can use as elements, but we start to get into complex areas that we haven't really broken ground with on the series before, where it is fun and exciting, but also very challenging.
You!
The Battle of the Bastards becomes incredibly compact. All these combatants forced into this incredibly tight space on the battlefield, partly crammed in by bodies.
You've got horses, you've got, men of either side just piled up in this massive heap.
The body pile was absolutely enormous in terms of its scale and ambition. All of those prop bodies had to be dressed in the appropriate uniforms. We had to have the shields and the flags. You then need to dress the horses in their saddlery. You need to make sure that the correct sigil is on the horse. Even though I know that all of these bodies are fake, I was deeply moved.